Well, tensions are running high in Brazil as far-right incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro defends his post from left-wing ex-president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Bolsonaro, a former army captain who served as a Congress member for Rio de Janeiro, rose to prominence around 2014, and Lula, who founded the Workers' Party, is regarded as one of, if not the, most popular presidents in Brazil's history. So here to discuss what's at stake in this election is Craig Pasta Jardula, co-host of the Convo Couch. Craig, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to see you. So tell us more about how this race is shaping up.
Well, there could possibly be a second round if the one candidate doesn't get the majority, 50 plus 1 votes. And a lot of people feel that Lula da Silva will be able to wrap it up in the first round. But from what I'm feeling on the streets, and I'm in a Lula stronghold, I'm actually in Sao Paulo, is that there might possibly be a second round. A lot of people are hoping in this area that Lula gets back into power because he was always a champion of the poor. And that's been his message the whole time. But there are a lot of people out there also who feel that Bolsonaro, when we talk to a lot of cab drivers, Uber drivers, whatnot, that they like the progress in which Bolsonaro has created. And also they feel that he needs a second term.
Yeah, so just to take a step back, when Bolsonaro won, it was really reported as evidence of a growing trend of Trumpism, fascism across the globe. It took a lot of people by surprise insofar as that he was able to, deploy social media, in particular the WhatsApp app, to reach a lot of folks and mobilize a lot of folks that were kind of under the radar. People didn't expect the level of turnout that happened precisely because WhatsApp was such an effective way of mobilizing people and getting political messages out. And it was also reported in the context of Lula being very popular, but being the subject of a kind of political persecution by a corrupt court system that swept him up in a series of investigations into corruption. And it was evidence of this, the framing was fascist, a kind of a corrupt right-wing Trumpian president jails political opponent, comes to victory. I wonder how much that narrative exists in Brazil and how people are feeling about Lula now that they have the perspective of Bolsonaro actually having ruled.
Well, that's a great question, and it kind of is crazy because it's eerie, some of the parallels that we experienced in our 2020 election to what's going on right now. Bolsonaro is looked at as almost like the Brazilian-style Trump. When I speak to his supporters, I always ask them what their number one issue is with Bolsonaro, and they say they wish he would just shut up. He says too many things off the cuff. Kind of like Trump, And when it comes to Lula was jailed last time and couldn't run. So I think that's why Bolsonaro really got across the finish line. And like I said, he's always championed the poor. It's so similar in a lot of ways. This is almost like a Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, the matchup we never got. It's actually almost like taking place right here with a lot of the same rhetoric, a lot of the same narratives. Yes, you'll hear the term right-wing, anti-LGBT, fascist, but then you'll hear from his supporters, he's a populist. He's helping the industrialization of Brazil grow. So there's so many similarities. And yes, that same rhetoric that played in before is playing into now, especially when you talk to the people on the streets.
Although the kind of political persecution element of this is almost reversed, right? Because, domestically in the U.S., it is former President Donald Trump who faces various potential charges over, the latest stuff being Mar-a-Lago raid, et cetera. Whereas in this contest, the person who had law enforcement action taken against them is the left-wing challenger who was charged with money laundering and corruption, et cetera, and was convicted and sent to prison. And then I believe my understanding is appealed and has won. Is that the shape of it?
Yeah, but they're also talking about new charges right now that they've let slip through the crack on Lula. It seems like that's the way they're attacking him, is that he's corrupt, that he should have never been set free. So even though there's that argument that it's the left wing who's been kind of persecuted, with jail time and whatnot, it depends on who you talk to. It's still more the same. It's almost identical to what we see in the States. If you talk to a Bolsonaro person, Lula's corrupt. If you talk to a Lula person, they'll tell you that Bolsonaro has pretty much just given away all the land and the resources to multinational corporations. And so it all depends on who you talk to. It's almost so like identical to what you're seeing in the States and what you saw in 2020 when you talk to the supporters from both sides.
Well, the similarities continue. Apparently, Bolsonaro has taken notes from former President Trump's playbook. His latest is claiming potential election fraud if he does not win. Here's Senator Bernie Sanders speaking against any attempted coups in Brazil.
But it is the business of the United States to make clear to the people of Brazil that our government will not recognize or support a government that comes to power through a military coup or the undermining of a democratic election.
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of Bernie's remarks there?
Well, I mean, it's laughable sometimes. I mean, I remember when Donald Trump was running against Joe Biden, they said he wouldn't give up power if he lost an election, when simply Donald Trump and his team were pointing out the irregularities of the election system. Well, here in Brazil, they have a DRE system, which is a direct recording electronic device. There is no ballot paper trail. Now, we've met with election officials who say it's an open source system. There's 10 audits that come into play, but I mean, can you fully trust a computerized system? That's what the Bolsonaro team has been pointing out. And this is my 5th election here in Latin America. Every single election I went to, there's hand-marked paper ballots with public counting. In Brazil, we have a machine system in play. Like I said, a person goes in, their ID is checked, they press buttons on the screen, and whatever comes out, comes out. Now, the election council is saying it's an open source system with 10 audits, but it's hard to just go and say we're going to trust the system when there is no paper ballot trail. But I think it's much of the rhetoric we saw in the United States when they said that Trump wouldn't give up power. They're trying to say the same thing here for Bolsonaro, but personally, I don't buy it.
Yeah, and to be clear, there was the reason that we know about the kind of the politically motivated nature of the, Lula persecution was because there was this enormous trove of documents, emails, communications that were leaked to The Intercept. The Intercept broke that story and reported on it back in 2018. There was something called Operation Car Wash, which is a corruption probe that was basically weaponized. Very explicitly, we found out from these communications by people who had been vehemently denying doing so. And so it's not that there isn't corruption in Brazil, obviously, or that Lula wasn't a part of it, but that there was an effort as the highest echelons of the court system to try to take him down for political reasons. It's a fascinating story that I'm sure we'll continue to follow. And we appreciate you for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me on, guys.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.